At the same time, during World War II, Benjamin Britten was one of the most celebrated British composers, and he was an avowed pacifist, and in fact he was a conscientious objector. He was in the US when the war broke out, and only made it back to his home in England in 1942. Now, he was hugely affected, and he was deeply convinced of the futility of war. In fact, I think many of the composers who composed at the time did think of war as futile, of all the death, of the fact that the combatants, rather than being enemies, were really victims of this sort of human folly, this human hubris. And so Britten always wanted to write some huge piece that put his pacifist views into context, into an artistic expression, and he got his chance in 1962 when he was asked to write a new piece for the consecration of the rebuilt Coventry Cathedral, which was bombed along with much of the city of Coventry during the war. So he was given carte blanche to write a huge orchestra, chamber orchestra, a full choir, children's choir, and a soprano, tenor and baritone soloist, piano, 2 organs. I mean, it is a massive, massive piece. In fact, they needed 2 conductors to perform it when they first did it, and it's often performed like that still. A requiem, as a lot of you may know, is the Catholic Mass for the dead, and many composers have written their own requiems to music because the subject matter really lends itself to the expression that music can give it. Mozart, Verdi, just to name a few, have written their requiems. But this one was slightly different. All requiems, or most requiems, use the text from the Latin Mass to go through, for example, the Dies Irae, the Agnus Dei, Lamb of God, the Day of Wrath. But in this one, the Latin Mass is interspersed by the poetry of Wilfred Owen, who was an English war poet, and he died in the First World War, just days before the end. There are sort of 3 forces that are at work in the Britten War Requiem. There is the full orchestra and full chorus, along with the soprano, who sing the part of the Latin Mass. And then the baritone and the tenor sing Owen's poetry, and they depict an English soldier and a German soldier, not enemies, but equally bewildered at the futility of all the slaughter that's taken place around them. So it's more intimate between just 2 solo voices and a chamber orchestra. And then there's a children's choir that provides an otherworldly counterpoint to what's going on. We're going to hear the Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, from Britten's War Requiem, and it's based, apart from the Agnus Dei text, Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world. It's based on Owen's poem, At a Calvary near the Ancre, which starts with the line, "One ever hangs where shoulder roads part." And it's a small protest, a comment against the church's and the state's promotion of violence and Owen's principled resistance to it. You can hear this descending, very simple melodic ostinato, a very simple melody that's repeated over and over again. But it's very unsettled, and it reflects Owen's own unsettled aspect to it, because it's written in 5/4, 5 beats in a bar. Which is unusual to English speakers. We normally expect things in 4 or 3, which is much more regular for us to predict. If you count the way the music goes and you listen to this 5 in a bar, you'll see how unsettled it feels.